draft the best practices document that we have on our website. So what we did was we asked some of our top scoring mentors to send me a note. Some sent half a page, some sent 4 pages, talking about what they thought they did that was effective. And it was my role to take a look at that and figure out how do we take all this data, probably 12 or 15 pages, and turn it into something that would be practical and useful. So after trying different things, it occurred to me that there were certain themes that were common to all of the mentors' comments. They may not have done things exactly the same way. They may have used different tools. They did it in a way that fit them and their style. But there were certain consistent themes that you could see in all that data. And so we put together a list of 6 themes. We're going to put it on the board in a minute. And within those 6 themes, I simply listed below some of the comments that were made in the document that I could pull out and attribute to those themes. So what I'd like to do is go through those 6, have the panel comment on them, and ask you to engage, and also have a dialogue about each one. We'll take about 10 minutes per theme. We have 6, we have an hour. That should work just fine. Math right. Even though Mike Harris is on this side of the board, I'm sure some of you will have questions. We're used to Mike volunteering the first one. Bill's out there, so that'll be okay. But I really would like this to be interactive. I want you to consider the written document a draft because it's awaiting your feedback. And with that, we can get started. Peter, if you're ready. Peter's going to win an Academy Award for this presentation, I'm sure.
I want residual rights.
And we'll go with the first one. As I said, each of these themes, for lack of a better word, is something that was consistent among the candidates, but they all handled it, the candidates, the writers, but they all handled it in a different way. So the first thing that struck me was they all have a point of view. They have some particular approach that you can see throughout everything they do as a mentor that's consistent and fits them well. It's not the same for everyone, but they look at all their issues through that lens. And I thought that was very interesting. So I wanted to ask Mike O'Hara to kind of start out the conversation talking a little bit about how he has a point of view and how he thinks about mentoring, and then I'll ask anybody else to join in.
Okay, well, looking out at this room, I'm not sure why I'm up here and you're out there, but we'll do our best here. This first one, looking at the bullet points underneath there are 3 of those that really resonate with me. The first one is that middle one, be their advocate. A lot of times we talk about, we do our best work when we convince somebody that business is not right for them, and that's probably true, but it should never be our first objective. People are coming to us with their dreams and plans and hopes, and our mission really is to try to help them make those happen. And if it can't happen, yes, we need to help them avoid doing damage to themselves, but we should go through an extended process before we get to that conclusion. The second one is that first one, the importance of listening. Years ago when I joined SCORE, there are a few people in this room would remember Henry Cranford, who was a senior member of the chapter back then, and one of the wisest people I ever met. And I remember him one time saying the way a client meeting should go, especially the initial one, is the first half of the meeting, we should listen to the client, find out as much as we can about what their business is or what they want to do, how they plan to go about it. And then in the second half of the meeting, we should feed back our reflections and thoughts and suggestions. And at the end of the meeting, we should come to an agreement on what needs to happen next and when. And very simple, but really when you think about it, that's the SLATE process that we use in a nutshell. And that's something that has stayed with me over the years and that I try to follow. The third one is, or point that stands out to me is the last one, ask hard, unusual questions to make sure they think. And I think that works, going back to that that idea of how a meeting should flow, that works on both sides of the meeting. Obviously, when we're trying to find out about their business or what they want to do, we ask a lot of questions, probing questions to draw them out and make sure we understand as much as possible. But when it gets to feedback, questions can be very useful in that context too. Rather than saying, I think you should do this or do that, if we can, I think it's helpful to say, how would you do that? And follow up with, okay, well, what do you do first? How do you prioritize those things? See if we can draw out of the client the plan of action that we think is going to be helpful to them. And, you know, if you want to get more directive, you could say, what would you think about doing this, and see how they react. But I guess, you know, I spent my career in management, and one of the things I learned is that you don't really know if people understand what you're asking them to do until they can tell you without prompt what you're trying to tell them. You know, you tell people, do this, they smile, they nod, you say, do you have any questions? No. Do you understand? Yes. They go and do something completely different. When you ask them why, they say, well, I thought that's what you wanted me to do.
Yeah.
So I think if you can draw out, and you know, we should have a point of view. We're trying to get the client to a certain plan of action, but if we can draw that out with questions instead of saying, here's what I think you should do, I think it's going to be more lasting and
Sure.
effective.
Now, would anyone like to speculate on whose comment Ask Hard Questions was? No doubt about it. Jackie, you made the comment, act like a consultant, think like an educator. Can you talk about that? I thought that was very an interesting perspective.
I think that comes from my experience in higher ed, where you're working with students and they have an idea of where they want to go, but because of my experience or because of your experience, you have a better understanding of perhaps where they need to be directed. So when I think like an educator, I'm looking at what their total needs are with regard to becoming educated in their field. Many clients, I think, come to us because they think they want to start a business, but they may have other emotional needs that they're coming to have met. So I try to keep those things in consideration when I'm talking through and listening to their business ideas and what they want to do. The other thing is, we don't charge anything, but we're a valuable resource. And so when I meet with a client, I want to make sure that they are getting everything that they can from me. And so what I do is I keep in mind that they're paying me $500 an hour, and they're going to get that value out of the time that we spend. And I try to make every one of my clients exchanges, whether it's a 1 or 2 meeting interaction or over time, that constantly that I'm on retainer to them and their needs. So that's kind of the way that I approach it. They may not necessarily see that from me when they meet with me, but that's how I try to go through each one of my client exchanges.
Comments, questions?